My husband gave me an STD while pregnant with his child. I ended up exposing his secret double life that he had been keeping from me. I never expected my life to take a turn like this.
At 5 months pregnant, I had envisioned this stage of my life to be one of excitement, filled with baby shopping, nursery decorating, and planning for the arrival of our child. Instead, I sat in a cold examination room, my heart pounding in my chest as the doctor's words echoed in my head. "You've tested positive for an STD."
My mind went blank.
My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the examination table. This had to be a mistake. There was no way. My husband, Eric, was the only man I had been with for years.
This couldn't be happening.
The doctor must have seen the shock on my face. "It's a common infection, and thankfully, it's treatable with antibiotics. But we need to start treatment immediately to avoid any risks to the baby."
The baby. I cradled my stomach instinctively. What did this mean for my child?
How could I have gotten this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The doctor gave me a knowing look, as if she already had an idea but didn't want to be the one to say it. "Usually, this type of infection is transmitted through sexual contact," she said carefully. "I recommend having an honest conversation with your partner."
An honest conversation. That was almost laughable.
The moment I left the hospital, my mind raced with questions.
Had Eric been cheating on me? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, how could he do this to me while I was carrying our child?
I gripped the steering wheel as I drove home, a sickening knot twisting in my stomach. I had to confront him. I needed answers. I arrived home to find Eric sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit him. My hands clenched into fists as I stood in the doorway, staring at the man I had trusted with my heart, my future, and now, my unborn child's safety.
He finally looked up and smiled. "Hey babe.
How was the checkup?"
I threw my purse onto the table with a loud thud. "You tell me, Eric." His smile faltered.
"What's wrong?" I folded my arms, my nails digging into my skin to keep myself from shaking. "I tested positive for an STD today." His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he schooled his expression.
"What? That's crazy."
"That has to be a mistake."
I laughed bitterly. "A mistake?"
The doctor ran the tests twice. "There's no mistake." Eric stood up, running a hand through his hair. "I don't have anything. How do you even know it came from me?" The audacity of his words sent a fresh wave of rage through me. "Because I haven't been with anyone else, Eric."
I shouted. "You're my husband. You're supposed to be the only one I've been intimate with."
"Unless," my breath caught as realization dawned. "Unless you haven't been faithful."
His jaw tightened.
"You're accusing me of cheating. Don't play dumb."
I snapped.
"If you haven't been sleeping around, then how the hell did I end up with an STD while pregnant with your child?"
Eric opened his mouth, then shut it again. He had nothing to say.
Silence stretched between us, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw him for what he truly was, a liar. "I need you to be honest with me," I said, my voice quieter now. "I deserve to know the truth." But instead of confessing, Eric shook his head, scoffing. "You're overreacting. You probably got it from a public bathroom or something." I stared at him, stunned by his complete lack of remorse.
That was the moment I knew. He wasn't going to tell me the truth. I would have to find it myself. I barely slept that night.
Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed our conversation, the way Eric had dodged my questions, the way he had deflected blame. At around 3 a.m., I made my decision. If Eric wasn't going to tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I carefully reached for his phone, which was charging on his nightstand. He never let me touch it, always claiming it was work stuff.
But tonight, I wasn't asking for permission.
My fingers trembled as I unlocked it, relieved to find that his passcode hadn't changed. My heart pounded as I opened his messaging app. And then, my world shattered.
There were dozens of messages. Not just one woman. Multiple.
Flirty texts.
Explicit photos.
And worst of all, screenshots from dating apps. Eric had been living a double life. I scrolled through message after message, feeling like I was drowning in betrayal. Some of these conversations went back months, even years. One message, in particular, made my blood run cold.
"Just got my test results. You should get checked too.
Don't want you passing anything to your wife, winking face."
My stomach churned. He knew.
Eric had infected me with an STD, knowing full well he had been exposed to one. And he had let me walk into that doctor's office clueless, carrying his child. Tears streamed down my face. But I wasn't just sad. I was furious. Eric had not only betrayed me, but he had put my health, and our baby's health, at risk.
I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself.
Eric was still fast asleep, unaware that his entire world was about to burn. I spent the next morning locked in our guest bathroom, staring at my phone, debating what to do. I had all the proof I needed: text messages, screenshots of dating profiles, even messages from some of the other women confirming they had gotten STDs from Eric. But I wasn't just looking for proof anymore. I needed answers. I scrolled through the messages again, searching for the women who seemed the most involved. One name popped up more frequently than the others: Jessica. She and Eric had been talking for over a year, and judging by their messages, she wasn't just a fling, she had feelings for him. I took a deep breath and typed out a message. Hey, Jessica. You don't know me, but I think you know my husband, Eric. I'd like to talk. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. Jessica, oh my God. Are you serious? Completely. I just found out about everything last night. I need to know the truth. After a pause, 3 little dots appeared. Jessica, I had no idea he was married. He told me he was divorced. I clenched my jaw. Of course he did. He's not. We've been married for 5 years. And I'm pregnant with his child. This time, the response came almost instantly. Jessica, I am so sorry. I swear, if I had known. I cut her off. I believe you. But I need to know everything. How long were you seeing him? Jessica hesitated. Then she started typing. Over the next hour, she told me everything. Eric had been seeing her for over a year. He had told her he was divorced and that he was starting over. He had even met her family. My stomach turned as she recounted the details: the weekend trips, the expensive gifts, the night spent at her apartment while I was home alone, waiting for him to return from supposed work meetings. But the worst part? Jessica wasn't the only one. She gave me names, contact information, even forwarded me screenshots of conversations where Eric had bragged about sleeping with multiple women at the same time. I wanted to throw up. I wasn't just dealing with one betrayal. I was dealing with dozens. By the time Eric came home that evening, I was ready. He walked through the door, acting like everything was normal. Hey, babe. How was your day? I didn't say anything. I just slid my phone across the table toward him. He frowned and picked it up. The moment he saw the screenshots, his face drained of color. What the hell is this? He muttered. I folded my arms. That, Eric, is proof. He swallowed hard. Where did you get this? I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you mean the proof of your cheating? The proof of your other life? The proof that you've been sleeping with multiple women while I'm pregnant with your child? I shook my head. Does it even matter where I got it? It's the truth, Eric. And you knew what you were doing. He had the audacity to try and deny it at first, to act like I had somehow misunderstood things. But the moment I mentioned Jessica, his entire demeanor shifted. His shoulders slumped. Look, I held up a hand. Don't bother. I don't want to hear excuses. I just want you gone. His eyes widened. Wait. I'm done, Eric. My voice was eerily calm. I'm filing for divorce. I'm taking full custody of this baby. And I swear, if you ever try to come near me or our child, I will make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of man you are. For the first time since I had confronted him, I saw something flicker across his face. Panic. He knew he had lost. The divorce process wasn't easy. Eric fought me at every turn, but with the overwhelming evidence I had, the judge sided with me. I got everything: the house, full custody of our unborn child, and enough financial support to ensure I could start fresh. I cut off all contact with Eric. For months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I went to therapy, leaned on my closest friends, and prepared myself for single motherhood. And then, one day, I went into labor. The moment I held my baby in my arms, I knew I had made the right decision. This child deserved a life free from manipulation, lies, and deceit. And I would give them exactly that. As I looked down at my newborn's face, I made a silent promise. We're going to be okay. We're going to be happy. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. A year had passed since I walked out of that courtroom with my freedom. A year since I cut ties with Eric, since I vowed to give my child a life free from his deception and lies. And for the first time in a long time, I was happy. Life as a single mother wasn't easy, but it was real. I no longer had to tiptoe around a cheating husband, no longer had to wonder what lies I was being fed. My days were filled with baby giggles, late-night feedings, and moments of pure, unconditional love. I had moved out of our old house, needing a fresh start. I found a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, not as big as the house I had shared with Eric, but it was mine. My space. My sanctuary. And despite the struggles, I had found a new sense of strength in myself. Then, one evening, as I sat in the park with my baby nestled in a stroller, a familiar voice broke my thoughts. Hey, stranger. I turned to see Daniel, an old college friend I hadn't seen in years.
I blinked in surprise. Daniel?
Wow, it's been forever. He smiled, sliding his hands into his pockets.
Yeah, I moved back to town recently.
I actually live a few blocks from here. Small world. We caught up as we walked through the park, talking about old memories, where life had taken us.
I told him about the baby, about my new life.
He listened, really listened, in a way that felt refreshing.
By the time we parted ways, he hesitated before speaking. Listen, I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to overstep.
But if you ever want to grab coffee sometime, no pressure, just to catch up, I'd love that.
For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something I had forgotten.
Hope.
I smiled.
I'd like that, Daniel. As I watched him walk away, I realized something.
I wasn't broken anymore.
I wasn't the woman who had been betrayed, manipulated, or cast aside. I was me.
Strong.
Independent.
A mother. A survivor.
And whoever walked into my life from here on out,
they would meet a woman who knew her worth. This was just the beginning. On to the next story.
My husband gaslit me into becoming a swinger to satisfy his fantasies.
So I met someone and divorced him for good. For 7 years, I thought I had a happy marriage.
Michael and I had built a life together, one that felt solid, secure. We had our routines, weekend brunch at our favorite cafe, summer trips to the beach, and nights spent curled up on the couch watching TV. It wasn't the most exciting marriage, but it was comfortable.
Safe.
But comfort has a way of turning into complacency. I first noticed the shift in Michael about 2 years ago. The passion that once consumed us had dwindled, replaced by distant kisses and half-hearted intimacy. At first, I blamed it on work stress, his long hours, my exhaustion. I told myself that this was normal, that all couples went through lulls. Then, one evening, over dinner, Michael dropped a bombshell. I was reading something interesting online today, he said, spearing a piece of steak with his fork. What's that? I barely looked up, too focused on my own plate. Yeah, about couples who, spice things up.
Try new things.
I smiled, assuming he meant role-playing or weekend getaway. Like what?
He cleared his throat.
Like swinging.
I froze, my fork clattering against the plate.
Excuse me.
Wife swapping. Exploring with other people. It's not as taboo as it used to be.
A lot of couples say it saves their marriage. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was a joke.
It wasn't.
The air between us grew thick with tension. Are you serious?
My voice came out sharper than I intended. He nodded.
I just thought, maybe it could help. We haven't been as close lately, and I want us to feel that spark again.
Anger bubbled up inside me.
So instead of working on our marriage, you want me to sleep with other men?
That's not what I'm saying.
I just think it could be good for us. I'd never suggest something that I thought would hurt you.
But it did hurt me.
It felt like betrayal, even though he hadn't done anything, yet. I left the dinner table without another word. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when my marriage had become so unrecognizable. I wanted to believe that Michael's suggestion was a passing thought, something he had stumbled upon online and mentioned without real intent.
But I was wrong. The topic didn't go away. A week later, he brought it up again.
We don't have to rush into anything, he said while we were watching TV. Maybe just talking to other couples, seeing what they say. I ignored him, pretending to be engrossed in the show. Then came the articles he would send me, testimonials from happy couples who claimed it had saved their marriages. He brought up statistics, claimed it wasn't cheating if both partners were involved. At first, I met every attempt with an unwavering no.
But Michael didn't stop.
He had a way of making me feel guilty, like my refusal meant I was the problem in our marriage.
That I was the reason we lacked passion.
You don't even have to do anything if you don't want to, he said one night, lying beside me in bed.
Just come with me to a club, see what it's like.
No pressure.
I was exhausted. Exhausted from the arguments. Exhausted from the subtle guilt tripping. Exhausted from feeling like I was losing the man I married.
So, eventually, I agreed. I told myself it was just to shut him up, to make him see that this wasn't for us. That once we stepped into that world, he would realize how ridiculous the idea was. I never expected that decision to be the first crack in our marriage's foundation. The club was nothing like I had imagined. I expected something sleazy, dark, and uncomfortable. But instead, it was an upscale lounge, dimly lit with plush velvet seating, soft music playing in the background. The people weren't drunk or leering. They were normal. Laughing, chatting, flirting. But no matter how elegant the setting was, I still felt sick to my stomach. Michael, on the other hand, was relaxed, sipping his drink like this was just another Friday night. See, he said, nudging my knee under the table. Not so bad, right? I forced a smile, but my hands were clenched into fists on my lap.
Then we met them.
A couple, Mark and Jenna, introduced themselves, effortlessly charismatic. Jenna was striking, with auburn hair and a playful smile, while Mark had a confident charm.
They spoke as if this was the most normal thing in the world.
Michael was immediately enthralled, hanging on to every word as they described their experiences.
Me? I felt like I was floating outside my own body.
I was barely present as we moved from casual conversation to something deeper. When Mark touched my hand lightly, I instinctively pulled away, but Jenna laughed softly, as if to reassure me. You don't have to do anything, she said. Sometimes it's just about finding connection in a different way.
That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't my world. It was Michael's.
But I swallowed the discomfort, for his sake. I let him take me to another club the following weekend. And then another. I let myself entertain the idea that maybe this was what marriage required, compromise.
So when the time came, I followed through.
I let myself be with another man, even though every part of me screamed against it. I hated it. I hated the way it made me feel afterward. Empty, hollow, disconnected.
But Michael? He loved it.
He was more affectionate, more engaged, telling me how happy he was that we had evolved as a couple.
He was getting everything he wanted. And I was losing myself. Then I met Ethan. He wasn't like the others.
We met at one of the events Michael had dragged me to, and at first, I assumed he was like every other man there, hungry for something casual, detached.
But Ethan was different. He spoke to me like I was a person, not a commodity. He listened.
He noticed when I was uncomfortable and didn't push. The first time we were alone, he asked, "Are you here because you want to be?"
I hesitated. No one had ever asked me that. Not even Michael. Something in Ethan's eyes told me he already knew the answer. Ethan and I started meeting outside the clubs.
It wasn't just about sex, though, eventually, that came too.
It was about feeling again. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years.
He made me feel valued, respected. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't have to settle for a husband who saw me as an object for his fantasies. I deserved more. The night I told Michael was the night I set myself free. I met someone, I said, my voice steady.
Michael scoffed.
That's the point, isn't it?
No, I said. Not like that. I met someone who actually makes me feel something. And I'm leaving you. His face twisted in disbelief.
At first he thought I was joking, but that soon turned into realization. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He had pushed and pushed, convinced I would always stay. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Leaving wasn't easy. Divorcing Michael meant starting over. It meant rebuilding my confidence, unlearning the way he had made me feel like I was less. But it also meant freedom. Ethan and I weren't perfect, but he was patient with me. He understood that I was healing. And for the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back. I was finally doing things for me. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.